Dog raises 3 tiger cubs, but years later, something unexpected happened. After their mother abandoned the 3 tiger cubs, a savior Lou came to their help without thinking of its tragic outcome. However, as time passed, they grew closer, making the onlookers' jaw drop in amazement. Unfortunately, as the tigers grew larger, a time came when the dog and 3 tigers were set to be separated. About 2 years later, something unexpected happened that left everyone speechless. Chi Ling, often known as Jim, was a well-known animal advocate. Having studied the subject matter thoroughly and having a strong sense of duty toward all living things, he committed his life to preserving animals in whatever manner he could. He saw an even bigger potential to make a difference when he was hired as a permanent consultant at the nearby zoo. Jim took great pride in his position and offered professional advice on how to best take care of the various animals at the zoo and meet their social requirements. Jim continued to be actively interested in animal rescue efforts outside of his employment obligations. He suddenly came into a heartbreaking incident while making his everyday drive to the zoo. Someone had abandoned a priceless Labrador puppy, leaving it defenseless and alone on the street. Jim was eager to show the vulnerable dog the love and attention she needed, so he picked her up without hesitation. He chose to include her in his family and gave her the loving name Lou. Thus, Lou was blessed with the rare chance to grow up with Jim in the lively environment of the zoo. She captured the hearts of the zoo workers with ease and soon became a beloved dog. Lou enjoyed riding along with Jim to work every day. He eagerly started her rounds, making sure her human companion and all the resident animals were doing well. She could not speak to them directly while they were in their enclosures, but she would wave her tail and look at them amiably from behind the glass. She gladly offered the zoo workers assistance in a number of ways during the day. She occasionally helped other needy animals by carrying supplies or by just being a comforting presence. Jim loved having Lou around and enjoyed her company very much. Their relationship gave them both immense joy and a feeling of appreciation for the special friendship they had during their zoo excursions. Jim took a keen interest in supporting and aiding several groups that worked to save and preserve wildlife. These groups would reach out to him whenever he had free time, asking for help in apprehending frightened animals or his advice on what to do next for rescued animals. 3 years after he had saved Lou, Jim was quite concerned when he got an urgent call from a rural agency. They told him about the 3 motherless tiger cubs that had been abandoned. Jim was deeply affected by the seriousness of the situation because these calls were uncommon and typically involved tiny urban creatures or injured birds. These defenseless cubs' abandonment suggested that their mother had met a terrible end. The group acknowledged the urgency and emphasized how much the cubs needed a proper location to stay, but their efforts had been in vain up until this point. Jim provided his zoo as a safe shelter for the cubs without thinking twice. Appreciating Jim's prompt reaction, the group gladly accepted his offer, confident that Jim would provide comfort and care for the cubs. It was clear that the tiger cubs needed a setting that could offer them sufficient security given their constant need for care and attention. Jim, on the other hand, couldn't help but worry how Lou would respond to the presence of these bigger felines. The next day, Jim and the crew gathered around the cubs with great anticipation as they arrived at the zoo. The cubs were captivating to see, their soft fur suggested how young they were. They were transferred right away to the hospital area of the zoo for a comprehensive checkup. Lou was exceptionally enthralled with the cubs, much to Jim's astonishment. She felt as though a primitive instinct had been aroused in her. She tried everything to get closer to the newcomers since she was completely obsessed with them. Lou was advised to watch and engage with the cubs by the veterinarian after they had their checkups and got any required medicines. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next. The Labrador greeted the tiger babies as if they were her own, surprising everyone. Warm and safe, she snuggled them close to her tummy with gentle kisses and a guarded expression. She clearly thought of them as her offspring, and the cubs magically accepted her as their mother. The veterinarian and Jim were astounded by this incredible relationship, considering how uncommon it was. Lou and the cubs had developed a deep bond that could never be replicated by human influence. Seeing how much the cubs may benefit from this, they let Lou follow her instincts as a mother. During the nights when Jim returned home, he left Lou and the cubs in the care of the hospital wing. Lou was a very committed role model who took her mothering duties very seriously. She took on the role of a protective mother for over 3 months, helping to feed the cubs and regulating their behavior as needed. It was really fascinating to see the cubs' development as they changed. Under Lou's tender care, they developed into bold and active young cats, no longer shy. The zookeepers did everything they could to extend Lou and the tiger cubs' time together as an unusual family. However, the day came when they had to part ways. Lou needed protection from their strong claws and fangs, and the cubs needed to mix with other big cats. Lou seemed to be grieving at first over the parting, but she took comfort in the knowledge that her cherished cubs were developing and prospering in their own special manner. They had no intention of getting back together, but fate had other plans. 2 years after Lou and the cubs had parted ways, a remarkable thing happened. The zoo had experienced many storms in the past, but none had been as strong as the enormous typhoon that passed through on that fatal day. Jim and his co-workers in the zoo moved quickly to address the security and safety of the animals. Sadly, they missed Lou in the middle of the confusion, not realizing how much the storm had affected her. Lou detested storms, and she was terribly impacted by this particular tempest. She was so terrified that all she could think about was how desperately she needed to get away from the wind and the rain. She was so terrified that she raced straight over a wall and fell into a gated area she had long since forgotten about. Interaction unfolding from a distance shortly after Lou walked into the tiger enclosure. He was prepared to go in when he eventually made it through the storm, but he stopped short when an amazing occurrence occurred. 6 mighty tigers eventually made their terrifying presence known, slowly emerging one by one. They both had their eyes on Lou, seeing her as a potential threat. But then, in an unanticipated turn of events, Lou noticed movement in addition to the 6 tigers that had been staring at her. Between Lou and the first 6 tigers, 3 additional tigers emerged in a blur of stripes in front of her. Jim was shocked to see that the other 3 tigers were facing their fellows rather than her. They appeared to have erected a barrier of defense around her. When she discovered they were the 3 cubs she had formerly fostered and nurtured, her level of fear decreased dramatically. Their relationship remained unbreakable. The elder cats eventually relaxed their guard in the presence of the smaller tigers, understanding that Lou was not a threat. With an air of indifference, the other tigers padded back to their spots and settled in to ride out the storm together. But then something even more amazing happened. Now that there was less chance of harm, the young tigers focused on showing their adoptive mother how much they loved her. They gathered around Lou, who was overjoyed to see her again and made sure she would be safe during the storm. The tigers recalled Lou as the one who had shown them affection when they were babies, and they discovered a method to thank her.